All right, so in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about how to enhance your introduction paragraph. So let's take a look. I tweaked a little bit of the introduction paragraph in the mentor text essay just to kind of show you an example of what might be considered a proficient but has room for improvement type introduction paragraph, right? So let's take a look at it. We have a hook that says, what is the most television you have ever watched in one sitting? So I'm engaging the reader with a question. I'm introducing the idea of binge watching or watching a lot of TV. Then I get into a definition of my term. The term binge watching has been used to describe rapidly consuming television. I have a fun fact or an interesting, piece of information about my topic. The average binge is 3 hours. Some people think this is harmful, while others think it is a fun way to enjoy entertainment. So in that sentence, I'm kind of introducing the conflict. Those are all the things we want to do in that BK, so it's doing its job. Then I get to a thesis statement that has counter-argument and argument language. So while it is true as my counter-argument language, binge watching can be a positive experience, it can be clearly argued that, and here comes my claim, binge watching is extremely harmful for people. So, like I said, proficient introduction paragraph does its job. However, it can be improved. So what I like to think about when it comes to enhancing an introduction paragraph is that you have all these little segments, right? You've got a hook, you've got BK, you've got thesis, and even within your BK, you have different sections. So you have a definition, you have a fact, you have an introduction of the conflict. So really what we want to do in order to make that introduction really flow is we want to kind of bridge the gap between each of those sections. We want to make sure that there's a connection from the end of one section into the beginning of the other, and I'll show you kind of what I mean by that. The first thing that I'm going to do to kind of enhance this introduction paragraph is I'm going to expand on this hook, right? So like there's no rule that says a hook has to be 1 or 5 or 3 sentences or whatever, but it is a place where you can enjoy some creativity and you can really kind of like stir up interest with your reader. So I might expand on the question that I have here, right? So what's the most television you have ever watched in one sitting? An hour? 2 hours? More? Right? So I'm continuing to ask those questions. I might even kind of continue and then lead into because again, I'm trying to bridge the gap here into this definition. So if the thing I'm trying to prepare for is a definition of binge watching, I might want to kind of lead into that, and here's what I could do. I could say, if you are like many Americans, you may have spent hours on end doing what is often called binge watching. Okay, so I still haven't defined it yet, right? So I'm not repeating myself in this next sentence, but I have introduced a term or introduced an idea in the end of this sentence that then leads into the next sentence, right? So there's a nice flow between like, well, you might have done what, a bunch of Americans do, which is called binge watching. The term binge watching has been used to describe rapidly consuming television. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause my video now. You don't have to watch me fix everything, but I'm going to pause. I'll come back, and then I'm going to fix a few things, and we'll talk about what fixes I made to this intro and how you can apply that to yours. I'm back. All right, so let's take a look at some of the fixes that I made. So the first thing we did, like we were saying before, is we improved that hook, and we ended with this term binge watching that we introduced in the end of the hook that leads into the BK. Okay, keeping in mind that in my BK, I want to define the term, I want to give a fun fact, and I want to introduce the conflict. Let's look at how I changed my BK to do that in a way that flows a little bit better. So I have my definition. The term binge watching has been used to describe rapidly consuming television. That one stayed the same. However, the next sentence, I took the end of this sentence and used it again to start this one. So the amount of television consumed can vary depending on the binge, but according to an article, the average binge is about 3 hours. So I still have that fact in there, but I've led into that fact with a way that flows and connects to the end of the sentence that came before it, right? So I was talking about consuming television. Now I say, well, the amount of television consumed can be different, but here's what I know and from my research. Okay, I take that 3 hours and I plunk it at the beginning of my next sentence, which is meant to introduce the conflict, right? So 3 hours might seem like a long amount of time to spend on the couch to some, but to others, it's a harmless and enjoyable way to rest and relax. So I'm introducing that there is a conflict, there is an argument, but I'm doing it in a way that still logically flows from the end of that previous sentence. Okay, then I go into my thesis. So I say, and while it is true that binge watching can be a positive and relaxing experience, remember I'm taking that idea from the end of the previous sentence, it can be clearly argued that in reality, pardon the announcement, everyone. So I took the idea from the end of the BK, I put it into the first part of my thesis. I'm still using counter-argument language. I'm still using argument language to say what my thought is. But now the introduction paragraph flows a lot more smoothly. It includes a little bit more of a creative hook, and that BK seems purposeful, and it seems like a part of the introduction as opposed to just like stuff that I kind of jammed in there just because my teacher told me to. So give that a try in your introduction. Make sure that it flows nice and neatly, and every part connects to the part that comes before.